Hello, friends and family. I am super excited to be back again with you with the I Still Do series, an extract from the Is and Us podcast we had started previous weeks ago. And I'm back again and I'm excited to be with you. And today we are going to be talking about the roommates with rings. That is, couples living like a roommate with rings. And I'm going to be talking about the marriages nobody talks about, a roommate with rings. So let's start. Let's get it rolling. So there is a quiet emergency happening in marriages today. The frightening part, most people never see it because it doesn't begin with shouting. It doesn't begin with slam door. It doesn't begin with divorce paper. It begins quietly. Two people sitting at a table without nothing meaningful left to say. They sleep in the same bed, but living in different emotional worlds. They are sharing the same address, but no longer are they sharing the same life. From outside, everything looks normal. The family pictures still get posted. The smile still appears. People even assume everything is fine, but behind closed doors, some things had quietly stopped growing. If it's you, you're still married, you're still paying bills, you're still raising children, you're still attending church, you're still functioning, but you are no longer becoming. You are no longer dreaming together. You are no longer building together. You are simply coexisting beside each other. Not divorced, though, not separated, just like roommates with rings. If something inside you tightened when you heard that, don't ignore it. Stay with me because this episode isn't about exposing broken marriage. It's about rescuing drifting ones before they become broken. Again, welcome back to Is and Hers. This is the episode of I Still Do series. Last episode, we challenged one of the biggest myths about marriage. We said something that sounded almost conventional. Love is not enough. Love may bring two people together, but purpose gives them something worth staying together. That means love may be what may have brought two people together. Purpose is what gives them something that's worth staying together for. So without purpose, love eventually has nowhere to go. Love is left without direction. And when purpose disappears, marriage doesn't usually collapse overnight. It drifts. That's how most marriages are lost. Not through one catastrophic mistake, but through thousands of unnoticed moments. One postponed conversation, one cancelled date night, one unresolved ought, one distracted evening, and one ordinary day repeated until it becomes a pattern. Then one day you look across the room at the person who you once couldn't wait to have come home for, and you realize you don't hate them. You are simply no longer connected. Then one day you just look across the room at the same person you once couldn't wait to come home to. And you realize you don't hate them. It's just that you are simply no longer connected. That's why indifference is more dangerous than conflict. Conflict still means someone cares enough to fight. Indifference quietly says, I've stopped reaching. So today, I want to help you recognize that drift before it becomes distance. Not to condemn your marriage, but to protect it because pain is not always punishment. Sometimes it's an alarm. It's an alarm. And alarms are not meant to shame you, they are meant to wake you up. So let's begin with the first warning sign. The first warning sign is that your marriage starts drifting the moment it stops dreaming. Not individually, together. When was the last time two of you talked about the future with excitement? Not bills, not children, not work schedules, not groceries. I mean, a future that required both of you. Because couples who stop dreaming together eventually stop growing together. So once couples stop dreaming together, life quietly becomes unpredictable. You just wake up, you go to work, you take care of kids, you eat dinner, you watch another episode, you go to sleep. and the cycle repeats itself. Nothing is dramatically wrong with this cycle, but nothing is intentionally moving forward either. You are just maintaining life instead of designing it. That's what happens when vision disappears. Relationships stop leading and start react. Every decision becomes about surviving the next problem. You are no longer steering the marriage. You are simply trying to keep it afloat. That's why the book of Proverbs says where there's no vision, the people perish. That is applicable to marriage too, because whenever marriage is not given vision or purpose, marriage will perish. So therefore, marriage rarely perishes because love disappears. They perish because vision disappears. And when vision leaves, passion quietly follows. Passion is not sustained by romance alone. It's sustained by purpose. When two people are building something meaningful together, conversation has energy. There's anticipation, ideas, celebration, problems worth solving. But when purpose disappears, conversation becomes administration. We're speaking of the kids. Did you pay the electric bill? What are we having for dinner tonight? Necessary conversation, but not connecting conversation. Slowly, the relationship begins to function like a business partnership instead of a covenant relationship. You are coordinating responsibility, but you are no longer cultivating intimacy. That is why little disagreements suddenly feel much bigger than what they are. Dishes becomes a battle. Thermostat becomes a debate. Toothpaste cap becomes an evidence that you don't care about me anymore. But dishes were never the issues. The real issue is that couples who stop building together eventually start fighting each other. Because if you lose your shared purpose, you will eventually replace what are we building with who is right. So the moment you stop building together, you start measuring yourself against couples who appears to be. That's when comparison quietly walked into the marriage. You open the Instagram, another anniversary trip, another perfect family picture, another smiling couple, another caption that says, married to my best friend. Then you look across the room, your spouse is eating cereal while scrolling through their phone, and a dangerous thought slips into your head. What happened to us? Comparison is never really about another couple. It's about forgetting your own assignment, because when you don't know what your marriage is supposed to become, everybody else's marriage become your measuring stick. You start comparing your everyday reality to someone else's highlight reel. You compare it with their vacations, with their promotions, with their date nights, with their anniversary posts, with their public affection, and slowly gratitude disappears entirely. Comparison doesn't just steal your joy. It makes you question the very person God gave you to build your future with. And once the satisfaction moves in, another kind of drift usually follows. Not emotional drift, spiritual drift, not rebellion, not abandoning God, just neglect. You stop praying together. Then something even more dangerous happens. You stop noticing that you have stopped. Church becomes somewhere you attend instead of somewhere you encounter God together. Conversation becomes a conversation about schedules. Prayer gets replaced by notification. Devotion gets replaced by deadlines. The Bible gets replaced by the endless scroll. Until one day, one of you quietly says, we haven't even prayed together in months. And the frightening part is not that it happened, it's that neither of you realize when it started. Because spiritual drift rarely announces itself, it whispers. One missed prayer, one busy week, one distraction season, until connection that once held everything together quietly weakens. And when your spiritual foundation weakens, your individual ambition begin pulling in different directions. One spouse wants to grow, the other wants stability. One wants to expand, the other wants security. Neither one is wrong, but without shared purpose, differences stop complementing each other. They start competing. Now there are two visions, two timelines, two definitions of success. Same house, different destination. Eventually, someone begins asking questions they never imagined they would ask. Not allowed, though. Usually around 2 o'clock in the morning, when the house is finally quiet, they ask questions like, what if I married the wrong person? What if I'd waited? What if somebody else would have understood me better? What are we even doing together anymore? Here's what I've discovered. Those questions rarely begin because you married the wrong person. They usually begin because you stop pursuing the right purpose. A marriage without purpose eventually starts looking everywhere for meaning, except inside itself. And that's one of the greatest strategies, because every marriage carries potential. Every marriage carries potential, potential to build, potential to heal, potential to influence, potential to leave a legacy neither person could create alone. So every marriage is carrying something the world needs. Children shaped by a healthy home, a business, a ministry, a mission, a testimony, a legacy. But when two people become consumed with merely surviving each other, the potential stays trapped. The marriage becomes storage instead of influence. It becomes a container instead of a conduit. And perhaps the saddest part is that none of this has to look dramatic. It doesn't have to have affair, no scandal, no explosive fight, just fine. When you ask, how is the marriage? We are fine. Everything still works. The bill gets paid. The children goes to school. This Christmas picture looks amazing. Everybody is smiling. But underneath the smile, something is missing. That is what I call false peace. Because you are not fighting. It's just that you are not flourishing together. You are not you are existing, but you are not becoming. And if nothing changes, eventually two people continue living together while quietly growing apart. Not because they stop loving each other, but because they stop building together. She has our world, he has his world. They have two different dreams, two different interests, two different conversations, two different emotional lives. Every year, the overlap becomes a little smaller until one day you look across the table at the person who once knew everything about you and realize you no longer know what is happening inside of them. You didn't become strangers overnight. You became stranger. One postponed conversation at a time, one distracted evening at a time, one spoken dream at a time, one unspoken dream at a time, one unresolved thought at a time. That's how roommates are created. Not through one catastrophic moment, through thousands of unnoticed ones. But here is the good news. Drift doesn't have to become destiny. Just because you've become roommates doesn't mean you will stay roommates. Every marriage can lose its way. The question is, will you recognize it before you lose each other? Let me tell you about Daniel and Aisha. They have been married for 6 years. Two good people, very good people. Two people who genuinely loved each other. Their problem wasn't love because they loved each other. It was perspective. Daniel loved structure. He loved planning everything, budget, calendars, goals, vacation. If it could be organized, Daniel already had a spreadsheet for it. Aisha was completely different. Aisha is creative, spontaneous, adventurous. She believed life was meant to be experienced, not scheduled. At first, those differences were exciting. She loved how safe she felt around him, and he loved how alive he felt around her. What attracted them during the dating became the source of frustration after the marriage. Daniel started calling her irresponsible. Aisha started calling him controlling. Every disagreement ended the same way. He wanted her to change. She wanted him to change. Neither realized they were asking God to redesign what he intentionally created. Eventually, they sat in a counselor's office, completely exhausted. Not because they had stopped loving each other, but because they had spent years trying to make each other identical. Then their pastor said something that changed everything. He looked at them and said, your differences are not your enemy, they are your design. Then he repeated, he said to them, your differences are not your enemy, they are your designs. Silence filled the room. Then he continued, said, Daniel, what if our spontaneity is the very thing protecting you from becoming rigid? And he looked at Aisha and said, what if his structure is the very thing protecting your dreams from remaining dreams? What if God never intended you to become the same? He looked at both of them and said, what if God never intended both of you to become the same? What if he designed you to become stronger together? Everything changed with one question. They stopped asking, how can I change my spouse? And started asking, how do we use our differences to build something neither of us could build alone? Then one question changed the atmosphere of their marriage. David stopped seeing spontaneity as immaturity. He started seeing it as creativity. Aisha stopped seeing structure as control. She started seeing it as stewardship. Nothing about their personality changed. Everything about their perspective did. The friction that once divided them started producing strength. Daniel eventually admitted, she reminds me there's more to life than checking boxes. And Aisha smiled and replies, he taught me that dreams deserves a plan. Listen carefully. The miracle wasn't that they became alike. The miracle was that they finally understood why God made them different. That is what purpose does. Purpose changes the meaning of your differences. Without purpose, differences become irritation. With purpose, differences become advantage. Without purpose, your spouse feels like competition. With purpose, they become your greatest compliment. Marriage is not about finding someone exactly like you. If that were God's plan, He would have created two Adams or two Eves. Instead, He created differences on purpose, not to divide, not to divide, not to compete, but to complete. Because strength isn't found in sameness, it is found in complementary design. That is why Ecclesiastes says two are better than one, not because they think the same, because together they can accomplish what neither could accomplish alone. Maybe the question your marriage needs tonight is not who is wrong, not who is winning, not who is changing, but what are we building together? Because once you answer that question, everything else starts finding its place. If you recognize your marriage somewhere into this conversation, take a deep breath. Don't panic. Don't become defensive. Don't lose hope, because recognizing drift is not the same as reaching the destination. A diagnosis is not a death sentence. In fact, it's often the beginning of healing. So you don't have to fix everything this weekend. You don't have to erase years of distance overnight. You simply have to start moving in the right direction. Every healthy marriage is built the same way, not by one grand romantic gesture, not by, but by thousands of intentional decisions. So where do we begin? You begin with one conversation, not in the middle of an argument, not while somebody is rushing out of the door, not while the children are demanding attention. You create space. You turn off the television. You put the phones away. You look at each other. Then you ask one question, not what is wrong with us. Ask, what are we building together? That question will change everything, because it moves the conversation away from blame and back to purpose. Don't ask, why don't you make me happy anymore? Ask, what kind of marriage are we trying to create? Don't ask, why have we grown apart? Ask, what future deserves both of us? Go deeper. Why did God bring us together? What assignment is waiting for us? What kind of home are we trying to build? What atmosphere do we want our children to remember? What legacy will still be speaking long after we are gone? What can two of us accomplish together that neither of us could accomplish alone? Those questions awakens purpose, and purpose awakens passion. Because once couple rediscover why they are together, they naturally become excited about how they are going to get there. Let me repeat myself. Once couples rediscover why they are together, they naturally become excited about how they are going to get there. So purpose gives ordinary days extraordinary meaning. Suddenly, dinner is not just dinner. It's another opportunity to reconnect it. Prayer isn't just another religious activity. It's how you protect what you are building. Date night is not just another event on the calendar. It's an investment in the future you are trying to create together. Even conflict begins to change, because you are no longer fighting against each other. You are fighting for something together. The marriage stops becoming the battlefield and becomes the mission field. But purpose cannot stay in inspirational conversation. It has to move into ordinary life. It has to move into your calendar, into your budget, into your parenting, into your communication, into your priorities, into your prayer life, whereby you ask yourself, are our daily habits moving us towards the marriage we say we want? Do our calendar reflect our priorities? Does our finances reflect our values? Does the way we speak to each other reflect the future we are trying to build? Because marriage don't drift into greatness. They grow there. One conversation, one apology, one prayer, one date, one act of kindness, one decision to put the phone down, one decision to become curious instead of defensive, one decision to listen instead of preparing your next assignment, one decision to choose us over me. Small decision repeated consistently eventually become a complete different marriage. Never underestimate the power of ordinary faithfulness. Extraordinary marriages, listen up, are almost never built by extraordinary moments. They are built by ordinary moments, repeated intentionally. Let me repeat myself. Extraordinary marriages are almost never built by extraordinary moments. They are built by ordinary moments repeated intentionally. So before we leave today, I want to ask you a few questions. Don't answer for your spouse. Answer for yourself. If your marriage had a heartbeat today, what will it sound like? Is it strong? Will it be weak? Barely noticeable? Which part of today's conversation made you uncomfortable? Don't run from that feeling. Lean into it. Discomfort often reveals the place where growth is waiting. When was the last time you and your spouse dreamed about something bigger than surviving another week? And here's the question I hope follows you home today. What are we building together? Not what are we paying for? Not what are we managing? Not what are we surviving? What are we building? Because marriage don't become extraordinary by accident. They become extraordinary when two ordinary people decide over and over again to build something bigger than themselves. Maybe your marriage doesn't need another vacation. Maybe it needs another vision. Maybe it doesn't need another anniversary. Maybe it needs another assignment. Maybe it doesn't need different people. Maybe it needs a shared purpose. Because once purpose returns, hope returns. Once purpose returns, conversation returns, passion returns, partnership returns. And roommates become soul partners again. So tonight, don't just ask your spouse, how was their day? Ask them something that matters. Ask them, what are we building together? Then listen, really, really, really listen. That conversation may become the first break in rebuilding the marriage you thought you had lost. Because you didn't stand before God and simply say, I do. The marriage that changed the world are built by two people who continue saying in ordinary moments, through difficult seasons, after disappointment, through misunderstanding, after years together, they are still saying, I still do. Until next time, stop merely living together, start building together, because a house becomes a home when two people share more than an address. They shared a purpose. Thank you very much. I'll be stopping here today, and I trust that this message has blessed you. If this message has truly blessed you, please share with your family, friends, and loved ones. You know, this might be the singular thing that could rescue their marriage. So be your brother's keeper by sharing this message. And don't forget to subscribe so that you can get notified when we drop another video like this. Please click the subscribe button, and also remember to put in a comment, like, and so on and so forth. I trust that we will be able to influence each other and add value to each other in the nearest future by the grace of God. Thank you very much once again. It's me, Ayo. I trust and I pray for your marriage today. I pray that the Lord, in the name of Jesus, will redirect your marriage into his purpose. It will find a purpose, and the passion will ignite, the fire will ignite, and so shall it be. Bye for now, in Jesus' name.